Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to our final Heritage Kitchener meeting, this November meeting. And we have a fairly good agenda and we will proceed. But first I would like to introduce the committee to our two student planners. We've got Kirsten and Ben over there. So this is nice to see that we have additional help. Thank you, Garrett. And I know you'll have a full plate of supervision, but I'm sure they'll do their excellence. First of all, we need to have a disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any items that indicate pecuniary interest? Seeing none, thank you. We shall now go to the discussion items. And our first item of discussion is the heritage permit application, HPA 2024V024, 115 Lancaster East and 5860 Ellen Street East. Diksha Chaudhary, our heritage planner, will provide a brief presentation. Diksha, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the first item on the agenda is the heritage permit application HPA 2024V024 for the subject properties municipally addressed as 115 Lancaster Street East and 5860 Ellen Street East. The properties are located at the intersection of Frederick Street, Ellen Street East, and Lancaster Street East, and is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The application includes a number of changes to the existing building, which I will not go through all of them since there were many of them and I've included all of them in my report, as well as the construction of an addition towards the rear of the property. To facilitate the changes, a site plan application has been submitted which has received conditional approval. As part of that site plan application, staff at that time had identified some heritage attributes for the building. These included, but were not limited to, the overall masting, the colored windows on the front facade, and the decorative gable ends. Most of the heritage attributes identified by staff are being conserved and or restored. However, some of the alterations include roof replacement of existing wooden board soffit and fascia, repair of the colored windows and decorative gable ends, replacement of existing wooden sash windows with aluminum windows, reconfiguration of door and window openings, removal of all wooden porches and wooden additions, and the construction of an addition towards the back of the property. These changes are necessary to facilitate the increase in the number of units in the existing building. Due to the property's triangular shape, there was space constraints for the proposed addition, and the applicant also had to accommodate waste services and parking. Due to this, the addition does project out from the side. However, design has been used as a mitigative tool to ensure that the addition does not detract from the existing streetscape of Lancaster and Ellen Street. Furthermore, because of the prominent location of the property and its location at the intersection of these streets and lack of vegetative cover, the property and the building are highly visible from the public realm. This will, however, remain the case regardless of any proposed changes or additions because of the shape of the property and its location. Thus, the design of the addition and the proposed alterations have been done in such a way that they mitigate any adverse impacts these changes might have on the streetscape. In reviewing the merits of the application, Heritage Planning staff note that the addition is the same height as the existing building and is sympathetic yet distinguishable from the existing building. It uses appropriate fenestration patterns, materials, and design to blend in with the existing building and within the HCD in general. The draft Heritage Impact Assessment has recommended certain mitigative measures to ensure that the proposed development does not have a negative impact on Ellen Street East and Lancaster Street East streetscapes. These mitigative measures include construction fencing, vegetative screening, vibration monitoring, and the preparation of a conservation plan to ensure the long-term protection of the existing building. A number of other studies have been requested by staff, which would ensure that the existing resource, along with the immediate adjacent resources, are protected. These include a documentation and salvage plan, and a temporary protection plan for the existing property, and a cultural heritage protection plan for adjacent designated properties. Thus, staff are recommending that the heritage permit application be approved pending the approval of the various studies that have been included in the recommendation on this slide. We also have the owners of the property and the architect present in case the committee has any questions. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to now call on our delegates, Mark Benjamin and Matthew Buller. Are you the owner or architect? Well, come forward, please. Just go ahead and present, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Benjamins, one of the owners of the property, and this is Matthew Muller, architect of John McDonald Architecture. And just to add on to what Diksha had explained about the property, we purchased the property in 2017, which is now some time ago, but it's always been in our intention to revitalize and restore the property. I live 5 houses down myself on Lancaster Street, so it means a lot to me personally. And the building itself had a lot of deferred maintenance. The boiler system is almost 75 years old. A lot of the plumbing and electrical is at the end of its lifespan. There's no insulation in the building. It's very troublesome to make it a useful and enjoyable space for tenants. There's only 3 tenants left in the building out of the 6. So 3 units are empty, and 2 of the tenants are near market rent and not at risk. 1 tenant has significantly lower rent, but we've worked with him, offered him another rental space in a different building, and are also open to having him come back after the renovations to the existing building. And we want it to be a good fit for the community and something that we can be proud of as a gateway property to the Civic Center.
Hiya. I just wanted to add a couple of points to Diksha's presentation. I think it's fair to say that the work that was done to this property over the past life of the building, 70 years, has been not very complimentary and maybe even a bit mean. So Diksha's presentation talked a lot about the removal of wooden additions and porches, a lot of which we're putting back, but in a more sympathetic style and manner. So right now I would characterize a lot of the work that has been done as thuggish, perhaps a bit 70s. Sorry for those of us who like 70s architecture. Not trying to disparage it, but I'm not sure it was appropriate for this particular property. So putting back or looking back to look forward has been, let's call it the name of the game for the renovations and alterations that have been proposed. I'd also like to say there is no back to this property. This property fronts onto Ellen, it fronts onto Lancaster, it fronts onto the 5 intersections. So it's really hard in that context when the backyard that you'd like to enjoy for those users is the back. And it has by necessity become where garbage collection, bike storage, and other things have been located so that we could keep those things off of the 3 other front facades. So anyways, I just wanted to point those 2 things out. And lastly, we came before you guys back in January of 2023, and we showed you the original intent, and there have been changes in negotiations with planners through the site plan approval and minor variance process. So the elevations and 3D modeling and information that are in the HIA from an architectural point of view do incorporate those changes, and we did try and listen back in January of almost 2 years ago.
I would just like to add one more thing I made note of is it talks about the removal of wood windows, and from a practicality standpoint, having wood storms on a tenant-occupied building is very cumbersome, especially on the second floor, to each season go and remove storms in the springtime and then put them back up in the wintertime, and renting a lift to be able to do that safely and comply with WSIB. It's just not practical. So we seek to use aluminum windows to try and have them match as much as possible and reflect the architecture of the home in a way that would be complementary to the former wood windows. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and if you'll wait a minute or two, I'll call on committee members for their questions to direct to the delegation. Are there any questions for the delegation? Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, and thank you for coming in. Can you just tell us what's changed from your 2023 proposal and why?
Certainly. So the massing of the addition, I guess we'll call that the north, on the north facade, has been revised to address relocating some of those back of house things that I've identified. So we tried to tuck that around the corner, so that's affected the massing. Previously, the application had 6 in the existing space, with the proposal of adding 6 units, and working with the city through planning. The unit that was going to be located in the basement on that 5 corners has been eliminated entirely, so that sort of facade generally stays more as it is at present. Also, for that 5 points intersection, I don't want to call it facade, but massing, there's a existing 1-story flat roof fronting onto Lancaster, and then on the Ellen Street side, there's a 1-story porch. In past iterations, we had proposed to generally flip those around to try and address roof leaks and other longer-term maintenance items, but those have been returned, if you will, back to be more in keeping with what's there. So the existing flat roof remains on the second floor, but gets a handrail and guardrail that is detailed to be more sympathetic, rather than a roof being added on top of it, for example. Back when we met in January 2023, the primary concern seemed to be about size, proportion, and type of windows. We had proposed more modern casement or even awning type of a different size and configuration, mainly for the addition. And that has changed in that for those facades that are immediately adjacent, so the east and west in particular, where there were any windows in there, they were changed to be of similar proportion and single hung type instead of either casement or awning type, so that when they were adjudged against the existing, they were seen as more in keeping. It isn't until you're around the back of the addition where things change a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Are there any other questions for the delegation? I'm puzzled by the overall resulting building. Will you have doubled the size of the existing building by the new addition? Or made it a third more? Like, just how big are we looking at this proposal?
It's certainly not a doubling, either in footprint or in total area. I'd say it's somewhere around a third.
Right. And the height is the same as the original height?
Correct.
Right. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Is it your intent to do a board fence, a solid board fence, between your property and the next property?
Yes, it is our intent with the neighboring property on Elm Street to have a fence, and the neighboring property on 111 Lancaster, we've offered to have a fence built also. And there's been a discussion about it, but they've also indicated that they want to build their own fence and have control over that.
Are there any other questions? Thank you. And I have Nancy Ashley as another delegate. Is Nancy here? Would you please come forward?
Well, I'll begin by saying thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you today. I have serious concerns about the proposal that is being submitted, and I'd like to speak to them. I being the owner of the adjacent property, 111 Lancaster. According to the City of Kitchener, Section 4, definitions, the subject property is a through lot. This means a lot bounded by streets on two opposite sides. These streets run parallel. A through lot has by definition two fronts. This is a legal definition. The city goes on further to state that in this situation, the side with the shorter lot line will be designated the front lot line. By default, then this would make Ellen Street the rear. It cannot be a side lot line. There is no other way of seeing this. The definition further defines the front yard and the rear yard as extending the full width of the property. While this is an irregular lot, the manner in which the building is situated clearly supports two fronts and two sides, or two front yards and two side yards. There is no rear yard. What the city is calling a rear lot line is in fact an interior side lot line, a mere extension of the interior side lot line separating my own property from 115, except that the other so-called rear lot line separates from 58 and 60 Ellen. They're both essentially the same thing, and yet the city is choosing to call that a rear lot line. In the CCNHCD, page 64, section 6.2.2, it states that there is a unique rhythm established along Lancaster of similar-sized houses all turned to 45 degrees from the street, generating a sawtooth street elevation of primary and secondary building faces. There, the norm is established as the oblique relationship to the street and is reinforced by the partition of houses at uniform spacing. Section 6.5, additions should be located away from the principal facades of heritage properties, preferably at the rear. The reason? To reduce the visual impact on the street. There is a principle here and yet this proposed addition, which the city is approving, faces and abuts not one, but two streets, and even comes 15 feet into the front yard of 115 Lancaster. It goes on further to state, and additions should not negatively impact the symmetry. This is the city's own recommendations and the city's heritage plan. Not only are additions to be added to the rear of the existing house, they are to be subordinate. This is not the case. In the original heritage impact assessment, it was noted that the square footage of the addition exceeds the original building. Its footprint will also negatively impact the moisture on my own Rebelstone foundation. This in part being because the city has, when they put the sidewalks in and the new sewers, they elevated the property higher than what the grade is of my own. So the property, the water slopes to my house, and the water from the 115 Lancaster is also sloped to my house. My property, my house, sits directly on the property line. The heritage standards and guidelines are mandated under the authority of the Ontario Heritage Act. They provide a consistent and uniform framework which is to be followed by the municipality. Their principles are rooted in accountability and transparency, taking into consideration the view of interested persons and communities. These decisions are not meant to be resolved behind closed doors, and the assessment of impact created by proposed changes should not be limited to a report bought and paid for by the same person whose interests they represent. This is a legal agreement that the city signed on to, and our Heritage Committee are thereby required to comply with their enforcement. Thank you.
Nancy, what is your municipal address?
Sorry?
What is your municipal address?
111 Lancaster. I'm directly beside 115.
All right. Which 115 is the property we're talking about, correct?
Yeah, and so is 58 and 60 Ellen.
Right. Okay. Is this the first time you've been aware of this proposal, or have you been part of the discussion?
I have never been part of the discussion, and I was never asked directly about my feelings on this. And in fact, in spring, I asked to be, when I thought this was going to council, I was told that I would be informed in the fall of the meeting. Nobody notified me. I only found out by chance yesterday that this meeting was being held today, and that it was again being held on November 18th. And this seems to be a pattern, because when the application went in for variances, nobody in our neighborhood was notified. And when the signs went up, there was one sign that was put facing Frederick. This property has 3 addresses. There should have been 3 signs that went up.
Right. What would you like to see as a result?
You know, I don't understand why an addition is going on to this house. Yes, it's an eyesore, and I can tell you living next door is not fun. It leaves a lot to be desired. This property has been neglected for years. We were given the opportunity to buy it. And what I would have done is do the basic renovations. I don't see where there needs to be an addition on this. This was bought for a song. I believe it was $650,000, I'm not sure. By today's value, that property has gone up, and with a minor investment in it, it could look so much better. When I bought 111, we bought it for a song, but we did minimal repairs to it, and I did a lot with the landscaping, and I get compliments every time I'm working in my yard by people walking past on how beautiful it looks. You're not talking a lot of money here. This addition is a renoviction as far as I'm concerned, and the city is supporting it.
Right, thank you. Just a minute, please.
Oh, sorry.
Are there any questions for the delegation? Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Now we come to the part where we may ask staff questions. So what are there questions for staff? Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. So my first question has to do with the notification of the surrounding neighborhood on this application. Can we get a sense of whether that was done or not done and how it was done?
Through you, Madam Chair. So this application, or this property has been subject to 3 different applications. So the minor variance application, we provide written notice to adjacent property owners by mail. We also post a sign on the property. For the site plan application, there is no public notification. And for the heritage permit application today, there is no public notification process for this application either. I can confirm that the delegate participated in the discussion at the Committee of Adjustment when the variances were being considered and delegated and was aware of those meetings and provided similar insights and concerns to the Committee of Adjustment when those variances were being considered.
And has Heritage staff had any conversations with the immediate neighbors?
The Heritage Planner, Disha can speak to any specific, but I know that there's been, staff have had the opportunity to have several email exchanges with the delegate regarding this application for the last several years.
Yeah, I can confirm that we did have some conversations, some email exchanges with the applicant where concerns were noted. Yeah, that was about it. I think some of the concerns that were raised today were similar to the concerns that were raised, but we have been working with the applicant and addressing some of the concerns that we've heard from Heritage Kitchener and some of the concerns that staff have had, but we have had conversations.
And regarding the concerns that have been brought to our attention by the resident, have any modifications been done to address those? I think concerns with drainage, I guess setbacks.
Through you, Madam Chair, so drainage is not something within the Heritage Department's purview. We don't necessarily look at things like drainage when we're looking at heritage permit applications. There have been concerns that staff have raised regarding any damage that might be caused by construction or any unwanted damages because of the proposed applications. And to mitigate those, we have asked for a cultural heritage protection plan. What that plan does is let staff know what damages might occur to immediately adjacent properties, so 54 Elm Street East and then 111, and suggest mitigative measures. So the mitigative measures to come out of that was construction fencing and vibration monitoring. So that plan has been prepared by experts and it has not raised any drainage or foundation issues as of yet.
Okay, my last question has to, I'm just looking at a picture of 111 Lancaster. It looks like a beautiful house and the landscaping is also beautiful. Given your conversations with the owner of this property now, can we expect a similar outcome if this development were to go ahead?
Through you, Madam Chair, sorry, could you elaborate in terms of?
Yeah, like is it going to be, the heritage attributes, are they going to be highlighted in such a way? I mean, clearly, whoever's owned it over the years has let it deteriorate to quite a degree. And, what guarantee do we have that anything that might be done to the building would be brought up to a standard that would meet the requirements of the Heritage District itself?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, and I think Mark or Matthew, please jump in as needed. So this application essentially has 2 parts. One part is the restoration and alterations to the existing building, and the other part is the addition. During initial conversations regarding this application, certain heritage attributes were identified for the building. Those include your colored glasses, the decorative gable ends, the overall massing. So most of the elements that have been identified by staff are either being conserved or restored. So the idea for this application is to essentially restore the existing building, do the essential repairs and stabilization repaired, plus an addition to increase the number of units so that we can have some gentle infill within the neighborhood. I'll let Mark speak more, or Matthew have more.
Going to change significantly. Landscaping plan, which I guess doesn't necessarily concern the Heritage Department, but to add to Nancy's care of her property, we'd like to do the same and have it a focal point, and really highlight the heritage aspects of the building. As Diksha explained, we are retaining 2 significant decorative windows with stained glass, the gable ends that have decorative cedar shake shingles will also be saved, and a significant amount of brickwork that needs to be repaired will take place. And regarding the overall size of the building, it hasn't had a lot of attention in maybe 75 years. So it's a significant amount of work that needs to be done. And to be able to build an addition is going to add rental housing that's badly needed, but also, give us the ability to finance debt that we can use to renovate the property. Without that, just leaving it as a 6-unit building and the capital expenditures needed to bring it back up to modern standards in a livable space, it financially doesn't make sense. And I know that's also not necessarily concerning to the Heritage Department, but from an overall standpoint of a project, it's something to keep in mind.
Okay, I think those are my questions. Thank you.
If I may, sorry. So concerns about quality of landscaping or drainage. Through the site plan approval process, a detailed landscape plan has had to have been submitted and will still be submitted for a formal review and approval moving forward. Extensive foundation landscaping is proposed around all 3 sides, the 5 corners, the Lancaster, and the Ellen Street side. Certainly, a copy of that preliminary landscape plan can be provided if necessary. In terms of grading and drainage, a grading and drainage plan is also required to be submitted for site plan approval and has been prepared by K-Smart Associates. Drainage will not flow onto either the 111 or 54 Ellen Streets. Proposing to bring it around the building through, we use the word gentle swales, so we're not heading north, we're going around. There are a series of downspouts. We have to get the rain off the roof to the ground, and we have to manage it in some way. Those are proposed to go from the downspout to grade underground and then across away again from those 2 property lines, the 54 Ellen and the 111 Lancaster. There's not a lot of grade to work with, though, so it has been difficult to try and address those, but we are trying. In terms of the recessed outdoor landscape spaces for the new units on the back, those are proposed to be drained to infiltration chambers buried underneath the parking space, the 2 new parking spaces on the Ellen Street side. So we are addressing surface drainage as well as below surface drainage, let's call it, and trying to keep it away from both of those 2 properties. In terms of the definition of the front, rear, and side yards, those were ascertained in conversation with city planning staff right at the beginning. And all of the decisions that were made in terms of massing, setback, et cetera, were based on those definitions provided at the beginning.
And to add, I have been in communication with both neighbors on 54 Ellen Street and 111 Lancaster, Nancy herself and her daughter, various times over the last couple of years. As much as they are willing to communicate with me, I've been open and ready to receive feedback. Thank you.
One last question. Out of curiosity, someone has to sign off on the engineering report or engineering what has happened when you complete the project. So who signs off? Your engineer or the city engineer?
Through you, Madam Chair. So as part of the site plan review process, civil engineering drawings are prepared. They're reviewed by our professional engineering staff and approved. They are then implemented and constructed on site. The applicant's professional engineer will need to go on site, certify those, and then advise us that that work has been completed. We then go out and do our own certifications and inspections, and only at that time do we return a financial security that we hold in case that there are site works that need to be remediated. So that's a standard process for all site plan applications in the city of Kitchener. It should be noted that this site is 0.1 hectares. It's less than what our stormwater management criteria does require. So any built conditions, so capturing of rainwater on roof, soak away pits, infiltration, will actually be an improved condition to what exists now. Right now is considered to be an uncontrolled water flow. The water lands on the property and likely does flow to Ms. Ashley's property because it is lower. So this, even though it is constructed, would be an improved condition because it would be considered to be controlled stormwater management. And again, we deal with all of that through the site plan approval process.
I know this isn't exactly heritage, but say in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, there's a problem. Who does the person, like say Nancy here, she finds there's a problem. Who, out of curiosity, who would she contact? The city engineers or her counselor or who? Garrett, could you tell me?
Through you, Madam Chair, no matter who were contacted at the city, it would eventually end up with a property standards violation complaint, which we would then go process. We would then visit the site, determining what's happening and ensure that it's in compliance with the approved plans. If it is not in compliance, we have a development agreement registered on title, which requires that the stormwater management scheme as approved and implemented exists for the life of the development. If something does change over time and that is no longer the case, the city has the authority under the Planning Act to enforce remediation and correction of any issues that occur over time.
Thank you for clarification. All right, you may take your seat. Thank you. I don't think there are any more questions for. Having read through this proposal, I keep seeing and reading and knowing that the building is at like a key point, 5 points, as we know it, Lancaster, Ellen, and so on. And I'm wondering, from a heritage standpoint, for those of you who are representing these areas, what is your impression about this proposal as to how it signals that one is entering a heritage district? Is there anyone who would like to make a comment on it? Yes, Peter. And Ilona, I think you have a question or comment.
I remember seeing a picture of this building, and I don't remember where it was, but it had a greengrocers in the front of it, And it was like sort of a neighborhood store, and there were cars that were parked right up in front of it. And when I renovated our house in the attic, I found like a little calling card that had the telephone number of the store, and you could call them up, and they would deliver your groceries by bicycle, which is just great. I wish we had that today. But I think that the point is that this building has changed and transformed throughout its entire life. It's adapted to different programs. It's adapted to different situations. Bits have been added. Bits have been knocked off. Changes have been made throughout it. And it has, unfortunately, through all those changes, had a lot of deferred maintenance over its lifetime, which is really unfortunate. But here is, once again, its sort of next phase in its transformation. And from, looking at the presentation that we have there, is it compatible with the sort of heritage values in the heritage neighborhood that it sits in? And my opinion is that, yes, it does, absolutely, right? I think that they've done a really terrific job on the design. It understands the building and understands the original building and its intention really well. Its scale, its relationship to the street, fenestration, it's really good. And I'm really happy to see it, and that this new development is portions of the new development help to fund the restoration of the original piece. It makes good sense, and I'm really happy to see that this project has turned out as well as it has. And I think it could serve as an example for other ones like it, because it's very well done, both on the part of the applicants and by staff. So yeah, I think it's really good.
Thank you, Peter. Ilona?
I too think that this is a really important property because it is a gateway property. It is the entrance to both the Frederick Street area as well as the Civic Center Heritage District. And although it might not be, everything that is outlined in the Heritage District Plan, when I look at that proposal that has come forward, I think it is so much more in line with what we're looking for than some of the other proposals that have come forward for this area. So I am in total support of what you're doing. So yes, I'm totally in agreement.
Thank you very much. Now we've heard from the reps of the area. And so the proof will be in the pudding when the pudding is made and we see the new building. And then we'll see if it comes true as you propose. So thank you for making your presentation. And I do understand Miss Ashley's concern, and I think we've heard from our staff as to how the water and drainage and so on is being looked after and where the contact will be. Granted, our work is with the heritage building, not necessarily some of these other aspects. And that is, I will say, a planning and an engineering aspect. But Garrett has explained how things are going to proceed and be looked after. So, without any further questions, I will read the motion. It's pursuant to Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Heritage Permit Application HPA 2024-V-024 be approved to permit the partial demolition, the construction of a 3-story addition, and alterations to the existing building at the property municipally addressed as 115 Lancaster Street East, 5860 Ellen Street East in accordance with the supplementary information submitted with this application and subject to the following conditions. So number one, that the final heritage impact assessment be approved by the Director of Development and Housing Approvals prior to the issuance of this permit. Two, that the final conservation plan be approved by the Director of Development and Housing Approvals prior to the issuance of this permit. Three, that the documentation and salvage plan and cultural heritage protection plan be approved by the city's heritage planner. Four, that the building elevations be submitted for review to the satisfaction of the city's heritage planner prior to the issuance of the heritage permit. And five, that the final building be reviewed and heritage clearance be provided by heritage planning staff prior to the issuance of the building permit. Who will move it, please? Ilona will. Thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Approved then. Thank you. So this will go to council November the 18th, 2024. Our next item is a notice of intention to designate 112 Margaret Avenue, DSD 2024-457. Jessica Vera, our heritage planner, will provide a brief presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as noted, this is a notice of intention to designate for 112 Margaret Avenue, which is a 3-story mid-20th century apartment. The updated statement of significance for this property was originally reviewed by the committee in August of this year. It meets 5 out of 9 criteria for designation, and that's within the area of design and physical value, historical associative value, and its contextual value. So in terms of its design value, this is a unique example of a vernacular architectural style with influences from both the Gothic and Art Deco architectural styles. There's only about, the Gothic influences could be seen within features such as the pointed roof line and the emphasis on vertical height. And the Art Deco influences can be seen in its repeated geometric detailing, symmetrical design, and craftsmanship. Sorry, having some technical issues there. We went back a slide. We should go forward. There we go. In terms of its historical and associative value, that lies in part with the original builder and owner of the site, as well as its architect. So the original owner and builder was Michael Kraus, who was a prominent member of the New Apostolic Church, and he had significant impact on this community, as was acknowledged within his obituary. He is also an entrepreneur within the city, being the founder of Kraus Carpet Mills, which at the time of his death in 2003 was the largest Canadian-owned carpet manufacturer, as well as an additional company called Strudex Fibers. He also contributed significantly to the built environment along Margaret Avenue and the city at large, being the builder for a number of similar land use types, similar scale apartments, and as well as detached homes, and with along Margaret Street, the New Apostolic Church there too. In terms of the architect, he was William H. E. Schmaltz, not to be confused with his father, who was also of the same name and was a mayor of the city. William H. E. Schmaltz was a notable architect within the area, one of his most notable works being the 1922 City of Kitchener Hall, which was demoed a number of years ago, though the clock tower portion of that building remains within Victoria Park right now. In addition to his architectural contributions, he was also an engaged citizen who served on a number of boards and local community groups, most notably the Waterloo Historical Society. He was an extremely active member, serving as president of the Waterloo Historical Society and also being a frequent contributor to its annual volumes, and he is recognized in the Waterloo Region Hall of Fame. In terms of its contextual value, it does contribute to the continuity and character of the Margaret Avenue streetscape and the surrounding residential neighborhood, being of a very similar setback, design, scale and spacing, materials, etc. So it continues the character of the area. It's located within the Warehouse District CHL and adjacent to the Mount Hope and Bright Up Neighborhood CHL. So the Warehouse District is characterized by a number of industrial buildings that still stand, but in association to those industrial buildings are the worker homes which surround them or are in proximity. And the Mount Hope Bright Up Neighborhood CHL is also a stable neighborhood, and they're characterized by mostly brick homes. It also has a contextual relationship to its adjacent sister buildings, and it is physically, visually, historically, and functionally linked to its surroundings, being in situ and maintaining its original use as apartments. The recommendation is that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 112 Margaret Avenue as being of cultural heritage value or interest. And that concludes my presentation on this one.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there any questions for Jessica? Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was any intention to designate the two sister buildings adjacent to 112.
So the two sister buildings, through you, Madam Chair, the two sister buildings updated statement of significance was brought forward in August as well, and we did receive responses from the owners, which is that separate ownership of those two buildings to 112 Margaret. So we're in discussion with the property owners right now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions for Jessica? Seeing none, I will read the resolution, for motion, and if this is approved, it will go to Council November 18th for approval. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 112 Margaret Avenue as being of cultural heritage value or interest. Could I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Any further questions? All those in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Goes to Council, November 18th. And now we're going to proceed to 148 Margaret Avenue. Jessica Fira will present a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a property just a little ways down the road from the one we just looked at, 148 Margaret Avenue, and it is a two-story mid-20th century single-detached building. It meets 5 out of 9 criteria for designation as well, those being within the area of its design and physical value, historical associative value, and contextual value. So in terms of its design and physical value, this is a unique and rare example of the Tudor Revival architectural style, being one of only 5 identified homes built in this style within the region of Waterloo. It features asymmetrical floor plans, steeply pitched roofs, and then superficial forms of the half timbering, patterned stonework, and grouped windows. And there has been some modifications to this home, including the turret that's at the front and the bay window, but these are considered appropriate for this architectural style of the building, so it's not considered to impact its heritage integrity or take away from its design value. I won't get too deeply into this because we just reviewed this man, but I think this is just further evidence of how he contributed to the built environment within the area, because he is also the original builder of 148 Margaret Avenue. And then in terms of its contextual value, it contributes to the continuity and character of the Margaret Avenue streetscape and surrounding area, again in terms of its setback, its orientation and scale, and the materials used. Also being located within the Mount Hope Bright Up Neighborhood CHL, which again is a stable neighborhood that consists of a number of different older homes. And it is physically, visually, historically, and functionally linked to its surroundings, being located in situ and again maintaining its original residential purpose. So in terms of the recommendation, it's recommended that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 148 Margaret Avenue as being of cultural heritage value or interest. And that concludes this presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there questions for Jessica? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 148 Margaret Avenue as being of cultural heritage value or interest. Who will move that, please? Natalie will do that. Thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor? Unanimously. Thank you. So that goes to council November 18th. Our next item is notice of intention to designate 51 Bright Up Street. Diksha will make a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the next item that we have is a notice of intention to designate 51 Bright Up Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So this property is located on the south side of Bright Up Street between Waterloo Street and Moore Avenue. An updated statement of significance was presented for this property at Heritage Kitchener's June meeting as part of the Municipal Heritage Register review. The evaluation for this property concluded that the property meets 5 out of 9 criteria, and it's recognized for its historical associative design and contextual value. The buildings are an early representative example of industrial vernacular architectural style. The property today contains a series of buildings that were built between 1903 and 1977, but the earliest building that was built was in 1891. Apologies for the typo in the presentation, but that has since been demolished. There are 4 buildings on the site that are of this architectural style of the industrial vernacular that are being proposed for designation. The property has significant historical value for its original use and owner of the property, the Berlin Piano and Organ Company, the Merchants Rubber Company, Jacob Kaufman, and Talman Henry Ryder. The Merchants Rubber Company was founded by Jacob Kaufman and T.H. Ryder in 1903. And the Merchants Rubber Company and its successors occupied the site from 1903 to 1981. The property also has associative value because it has direct associations with the theme of early settlement and economic development in Berlin and then Kitchener. The property also has significant contextual value because it's historically, visually, and physically linked to its surroundings. It still exists in its original location. It is also important in defining, supporting, and maintaining the character of the area. It is located within the Warehouse District Cultural Heritage Landscape, and because of its presence, prominence, and significant historical value, it could be considered as a local landmark. Thus, staff are recommending that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 51 Bright Up Street as being of cultural heritage value or interest. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Diksha. Are there any questions of staff? If not, I'll read the resolution. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 51 Bright Up Street as being of cultural heritage value or interest. And who would like to move this? Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Any questions? All those in favor? Unanimous? That will go to council November the 18th. Our next notice to intention to designate 53 Church Street, Michelle Drake, Senior Heritage Planner, will present.
Through you, Chair, the property municipally addressed as 53 Church Street was reviewed by Heritage Kitchener as part of the Municipal Heritage Register review process in September. Heritage Kitchener directed staff to pursue designation. The purpose of this report is to request that Heritage Kitchener and Council publish a notice of intention to designate for 53 Church Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. An updated statement of significance describing the cultural heritage value or interest is attached. Heritage planning staff found that this property meets 5 of 9 criteria for designation, including design physical value, historical associative value, and contextual value. The property demonstrates design physical value as a rare example of a late 19th century religious building, displaying vernacular architecture with influences from the Romanesque Revival architectural style. This style originates in the 19th century Romanticism and is distinguished by its use of round arches. These round arches were considered primitive, not widely accepted, and often primarily or served as a primary distinction between the Romanesque and the Gothic. The design physical value relates to the design, composition, craftsmanship, and details of the church, with many intact heritage attributes still in good condition. From historic associative value is present given the use of the land, the various congregations that have occupied the land and building over time, and the architect and builder of the 1952 annex. The 1952 annex was designed by W.H.E. Schmaltz, a local architect who was born in Berlin and designed various buildings and structures, and previously mentioned through my colleague Jessica in another presentation today. The 1952 annex was built by Oscar Wiles Limited, which was a local contractor known for building houses, churches, schools, and factories in Kitchener. Contextually, the church contributes to the continuity and character of the Church Street streetscape. The placement and massing blend with the adjacent buildings and much of the building stock on both sides of Church Street, particularly in terms of the setback and height of the building. As a result, it is staff's recommendation that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 53 Church Street as being of cultural heritage value or interest. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. Are there any questions for Michelle on this property? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 53 Church Street as being of a cultural heritage value or interest. Who will move it? Thank you, Alona. Any further questions? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And that will go to Council, November the 18th, 2024. Next, intention to designate 4454 Queen Street South. Diksha, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have another NOID for 44 to 54 Queen Street South. So this building is located on the west side of Queen Street between Halls Lane and Charles Street. It meets 4 out of 9 criteria for designation and is recognized for its design, associative, and contextual value. This property was also evaluated as part of the ongoing Municipal Heritage Register review, and an updated statement of significance was presented to the committee at its August 2024 meeting. So the building has design value because it is an early representative example of classic revival architectural style built circa 1914 to 1904 to 1907. Features include brick construction with stone accents, big brick buttresses with stone capitals, projecting capitals, and a symmetrical fenestration pattern. The building also has historical value because it has direct associations with the theme of economic development in Berlin and then Kitchener. And it also has associative value because the Euler Business College operated out of this building for many years. The college was founded by William Don Euler, who was a member of the Canadian Parliament and also the first chancellor of Waterloo Lutheran University, now known as Wilfrid Laurier University. The building also has contextual value because it is important in maintaining and supporting the character of the area. King and Queen Streets are the main commercial intersection of the town when Berlin was still a town and it was first established, and they continue to be an important historic transportation route. And the building is also physically functioning and visually linked to its surroundings. It exists in its original location and is located within the downtown cultural heritage landscape. Thus, staff are recommending that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 44 to 54 Queen Street South as being of cultural heritage value or interest. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Diksha. Are there any questions for Diksha? Seeing none, I will read the resolution. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 4454 Queen Street South as being of cultural heritage value or interest. Who will move this? Thank you, Des. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And now we will move on to Bill 23, the Municipal Heritage Register Review November update. And Diksha, are you going to be doing this?
Through you, Madam Chair, all of us are going to be presenting. The students also have one property each. So would you like to do it per property or should we all just present? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got the first property, and that is 69 Agnes Street, which is located on a irregular shaped lot on the east side of Agnes Street between Dominion and Park. And the principal resource that contributes to the heritage value of this property is the institutional building, specifically the original 1927 portion of it. It was determined that it meets 5 out of 9 criteria, and that is within the area of design and physical value, historical associative value, and contextual value. So in terms of its design value, this is a representative, or sorry, specifically the 1927 portion of the building is an example of the vernacular architectural style with Art Deco influences. It is also associated or has significant historical and associative value, that being specifically with the sports of curling and badminton within the region as a whole, as well as the Athletic Association of Kitchener and Waterloo, and later the KW Granite Club and the KW Badminton Club. They were the original owners and construction or builders of this property. It has the capability of contributing towards an understanding of the development and progression of sports, specifically curling and badminton within the area, as well as sports associations and clubs within Kitchener and Waterloo. And it does have significant connection in terms of its architect and its builder. Its architect was Bernal Ambrose Joan, who contributed to the built environment of the city on a number of different projects, including the 1922 original Kitchener City Hall, which was designed in conjunction with W.H.E. Schmaltz. He also contributed significantly to the development of key properties or key areas such as Freeport Hospital. The building was constructed physically by the Dunker Construction Company, which has a long-standing history within the city of Kitchener. And in the 1950s, the building had burned down, or a portion of it had burnt down, and the part that was reconstructed was overseen by the architecture firm of Jenkins and Wright, who also have history within the city of Kitchener. In terms of its contextual value, the building does remain in situ and it maintains its original institutional use as a recreational complex. It has changed ownership. I believe it was as of 2023 to the KW Badminton Club. So even though the ownership has changed, the club has been leasing space from this building for over 80 years. So that it maintains its contextual value in that regard. And that concludes this property.
The next property is 10 Bingaman Street, also known as 138 to 140 Lancaster Street East. It has been reviewed as part of the municipal, or evaluated as part of the city's Municipal Heritage Register review process, and it has been found to meet 4 of 9 criteria for designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that includes the design physical value, the historical associative value, and the contextual value. The design value relates to the architecture of the house. The house is a representative example of the Italian architectural style with complementary additions. High-style examples of this style are characterized by rooftop cupola or belvederes, ornately decorated cornice brackets, deep projecting eaves, contrasting materials and colors around windows and at corners, and segmentally arched window openings and windows. In Ontario, the 1865 Canada Farmer Journal outlined a more classical form of architecture with embellishments that resulted in a style that was representative of mid-19th century Victorian. The house is 2 stories in height with an L-shaped plan and a varied roofline, and the house is in good condition. The front facade faces Lancaster Street East, is built with brick, which is now painted, and features a 2-bay wide facade, a hipped roof with a projecting front gable, wide soffits, decorative fascia and paired brackets, 2 segmentally arched window openings and windows, 1 door opening and door on the second floor, a second floor ornately decorated veranda, and a full-width ornately decorated veranda with shed roof on the first story. However, half has been modified to be enclosed. The historical associative value relates to the theme of early development along with the Bingaman and Bowman families. Joseph B. Bingaman resided at 111 Frederick Street, and Bingaman Street was named in his honor. Jonas was married to Elizabeth Brubaker, and together they had 10 children. The lot was purchased by Joseph Bingaman, the second son of Jonas and Elizabeth. In 1881, a 2-story brick house built for $2,500 was constructed. Joseph married Leah Hallman, and together they had 9 children. He worked as a teacher for 12 years, was a member of the Board of Trustees for the Berlin School for several terms, was a member of the Town Council, a member of the Mennonite Faith, involved in the bookstore business, and involved in the Berlin Brush Company. He traveled extensively. According to various Vernon's directories, he lived at 10 Bingaman Street between 1881 and 1903. By 1907, the property had been purchased by Simon E. Bowman. Simon married Mary Alberta Kolb in 1889, and together they had 6 children. Simon was well known in motor circles, a member of the Canadian Order of Chosen Friends, and a member of the Independent Order of Odd Fellows. Mary was a lifetime member of the Trinity United Church, the Women's Association, and the Women's Missionary Society. According to Vernon's directories, Mary resided here until her death in 1948. The contextual value relates to the contribution that the house makes to the continuity and character of Bingaman Street and Lancaster Street East streetscape. The setting is noteworthy as the house is located on an unusual sized lot with a prominent presence on the corner of Bingaman and Lancaster. The property is historically linked to the surroundings lands that were originally owned by Jonas B. Bingaman, and the street, Street, being named after him. Oh. My apologies, I'm up next. So the next property is municipally addressed 79 to 81 St. George Street. It has also been evaluated as part of our review process and found to meet 4 of 9 criteria, including design physical value, historical associative value, and contextual value. The property demonstrates design and physical value as a rare example of a late 19th century semi-detached building and as a representative example of the Italianate architectural style. The building is in good condition. It is 2 stories in height and features a square plan, hip-roofed, and 1-story rear addition with 2 enclosed verandas. The front of the building faces St. George Street and is built with buff yellow brick and features a 3-bay wide symmetrical facade with central porch entrances between 2 projecting bays. The facade features wood soffits, fascia, and decorative brackets, buff yellow brick, segmentally arched windows with brick voussoirs and wood sills, 2 1-story projecting bays with hipped roofs as well as soffits, fascia, and decorative brackets, as well as a centered 1-story hipped roof veranda with decorative wood post, brackets, and guard. 2 wood paneled doors with a semicircular lights and segmentally arched transom are the main entrance, along with a storm door. In terms of the historical value or associative value, it has direct associations with a theme of early development and housing typologies, and more specifically, the semi-detached dwelling housing typology. In Berlin, the Berliner Journal documented building progress in the 1870s and referred to semi-detached dwellings as 2-family dwelling, houses built for 2 residents, or double houses. The semi-detached building typology was rare, with less than 2 dozen being constructed between 1878 and 1903. 79 to 81 St. George Street was documented as a 6th semi-detached dwelling built in Berlin, and it was built by John Sage as a 2-story brick house set up as a 2-family dwelling for a cost of $2,000 in the South Ward. The semi-detached dwelling typology was an early demonstration of multiple dwellings, which were not common in Ontario, but that could blend into the existing single detached dwelling stock due to similarities in plan, massing, and design. The contextual value relates to the location, orientation, massing, and setback of the building, which help to define and maintain the consistent street edge, similar building setbacks, on the south side of St. George Street. In addition, the orientation, massing, setback, design, and materials contribute to the continuity and character of the St. George streetscape and the Cedar Hill Schneider Creek neighborhood cultural heritage landscape. The building is in its original location, providing a physical, visual, and historic link to its surroundings, including St. George Street and the Cedar Hill neighborhood, or Cedar Hill Schneider Creek neighborhood cultural heritage landscape. And our next property is 1434 Tressler Road, also evaluated through our review process, also found to have met 4 of 9 criteria, including design physical value, historical associative value, and contextual value. The property demonstrates design physical value as a rare and early example of a mid-19th century 1 1/2 story frame house constructed with lath and horsehair covered with stucco, while the circa 1910 2 1/2 story Queen Anne house likely used a machine from Sears to cut an exterior withe of rock-faced concrete block to clad the wood frame construction beneath. The property further demonstrates design physical value as a rare and early example of mixed architectural styles, including the original 1 1/2 story house and the 2 1/2 story addition addition. Together, the original house and the addition provide a unique example of a single house comprised of structures of radically different styles and dates in a way that conserves the crucial qualities of each style and form. The barn also has physical value as an early example of a barn and its solid construction. The historical associative values relates to its history and association with early pioneer development, architectural and social development, and original, previous, and existing owners of the property. The subject property is located within German company tract, with lot 136 being originally owned by a member of the Brubaker family. The property is also associated with the Clemens family, the Lautenschlager family, and the Getling family. The property was purchased by Oliver Clemens in 1853, who was a direct descendant of George Clemens, who was among one of the first settlers to arrive in Waterloo County circa 1800. John Philip Lautenschlager came to Waterloo County in 1831. In 1834, he married Barbara Stoltz, and together they had 6 children. Their first son was Jacob, and he purchased this property in 1864, and thereafter his occupation is listed as a farmer. Jacob married Elizabeth Rosenberger, and together they had 7 children. The property passed to their second son, Isaac, in 1901. Isaac married Mary Ann Schweitzer in 1886, and together they had 3 children. Isaac was a founding member and director of the Farmers Cooperative Creamery Company Limited, also later known as the New Dundee Creamery, which operated between 1908 and 1998. Isaac and Mary Ann's second son, Roy Lautenschlager, was born on the family farm. He attended Rosebank Public School, Huntington College, and the University of Michigan. He was a member of the Mannheim Church, the United Brethren Church, and later the American Presbyterian Church. He became a Presbyterian missionary in China between 1922 and 1951 and was a political prisoner in a Shanghai camp between 1942 and 1943. During this time, he wrote a poem about his, in quote, sweet home on the, in quote, Old Town line, in which he credits his mother with the design of the 1910 Queen Anne edition. I'm probably getting this name wrong, but Gottlieb Getling and his wife Johanna Catherine Kraus wanted their children to escape conscription in Germany, and so they chose to send their children overseas to other family and friends. They took up residence in Roseville in a blacksmith shop, and later his son purchased the property from Isaac. That was in 1916. Albert was a member of the Wilmot Center United Brethren Church and later the Roseville Church. He taught Sunday school and was a member of their board. He was appreciated for his music, and he was the lead for a donation of what is known as the Hallman organ at the Roseville Church. Albert was instrumental in starting the New Dundee Creamery, previously mentioned, before it became a co-op. He wanted New Dundee farmers to acquire dividends and profits and spent hours taking and hanging posters promoting the creation of the New Dundee Creamery. Sangster Albert Getling was born at this property. By 1946, he had gradually taken over the farm from his father. He married Helen Marie Eckstein on November 29, 1947, and together they had 3 children. Sangster farmed his entire life on this farm where he was born and was a longtime member of the Wilmot Center Missionary Church. According to the Vernon's directories up until 2014, the property to this day remains in the Getling family. The contextual value relates to the rural character of the property and area. Specific elements that maintain the rural character include the layout of buildings, the long tree-lined laneway terminating at the farm complex with a house on one side and the barn on the other, the south-facing house oriented toward the lane, the location of the house within a grove of trees and the undulating topography, agricultural fields, hedgerows, and forests. The contextual value also relates to how the heritage attributes are physically, visually, functionally, and historically linked to the rural character of this property and this area.
So the next property is 100 Erin Street West. So this building is located on the east side of Erin Street West, and it meets 3 out of 9 criteria for designation and is recognized for its design, physical, associative, and contextual value. The property has design value because it's a representative example of industrial vernacular architectural style built circa 1914. The building is in good condition with many intact original elements. The building features a rectangular plan, red brick construction, with the Erin Street facade having decorative brick cornice and parapet, buttressing, and one-on-one hung windows. Something that was really interesting about this building is that the Erin Street facade was built on Erin Street on purpose so that the body of the building can be parallel to the Grand Trunk railway tracks that you can see behind the subject property. The building has associative value because it has direct associations with the economic development of Kitchener in the early 20th century. The building was purpose-built to serve a wholesale fruit business for the Longo brothers, with the basement having several homes for ripening of fruits to installing an elevator that would convey loads of fruits straight off the railway cars directly to the building for efficient distribution, hence the body of the building facing the railway tracks. At the time of its construction, this building was one of the biggest industrial buildings that was built specifically for fruit distribution in Kitchener. The building also has contextual value because it is physically, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings. The building is also located within the Warehouse District Cultural Heritage Landscape and contributes to the cultural heritage properties of that CHL.
The next property is 160 Cortland Avenue East, which features a 2-story 20th century brick building located on the corner of Cortland Avenue East and Cedar Street South. Later additions were added to the original building. Our assessment determined that the property meets 4 of the 9 criteria and is recognized for its design, physical, associative, and contextual value. It meets the first criteria as the original building is an early example of the Edwardian classicism architectural style, as seen in the many windows, simplified massing, straight roof lines, simple detailing, and the incorporation of some classical features such as voussoirs and keystones. It has historical and associative value as it relates to the development of public education and the Catholic school system in Kitchener. 160 Cortland Avenue East was first constructed as St. Joseph's School. As new settlers arrived in the area, bringing with them Catholic and Lutheran beliefs, these communities identified a need for schools that would offer their children faith-based education and foster both their spiritual and academic growth. During the early growth of Catholic education in Kitchener, the School Sisters of Notre Dame were brought to the region, and during their time at St. Joseph's were significant in shaping the growth and development of Catholic education. 160 Cortland Avenue East has further historical value due to its direct association with St. Joseph's Church. The land for the church was purchased from the school board in 1930, and before the construction of a basement chapel, Mass was held in St. Joseph's School. Additionally, St. Joseph's School, prior to its closure in 2004, was considered St. Joseph's Church Parish School. The contextual value of 160 Cortland Avenue East relates to its importance in maintaining the character of the Cedar Hill cultural heritage landscape. Key characteristics of this cultural heritage landscape include brick, or the appearance of brick, topography of land, and a mingling of early and late housing with institutional buildings, a pattern of development that was not traditionally practiced in Ontario past 1920s planned communities. The presence of 160 Cortland Avenue East as a school since its establishment contributes to the completeness of the Cedar Hill CHL. The original building is also physically, functionally, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings. The school is situated at its original location along Cortland Avenue East and continues its original function as a school. It maintains its historical connection to adjacent properties, specifically St. Joseph's Church.
Thank you. So the next property is 35 Ruth Street, known as Dune Presbyterian Church, and it was built in the mid-1950s and is a brick construction in the Gothic architectural style. The building is situated on a 0.5 acre parcel of land located on the north side of Chalmers Street and at the end of Ruth Street in the Lower Dune planning community within the City of Kitchener and the region of Waterloo. Our assessment is determined that the property meets 4 of the 9 criteria, that being the design and physical, historical, and associative, and its contextual values. So staff have determined that it meets the 1st and 4th criteria, as the building is a notable and unique example of Gothic architectural style. The church is in good condition and retains many of its original elements. It is 1 story in height and includes many intricate decorative features, including its hipped roof, tall central tower with a quatrefoil, pointed arch window openings with stained glass windows, brick detailing, and stone sills, arched double door openings, and its stone foundation. The church has significant historical value because of its direct associations with the Presbyterian Church, Adam Ferry, and the village of Dune. Adam Ferry, a prominent businessman in the early settlement of Dune, present-day Cambridge, in the early settlement of Dune, Adam Ferry would build a grist mill, sawmill, and distillery. In 1837, present-day Cambridge, Adam Ferry was appointed the postmaster, where he later became commonly known as the founder of Dune. He established a Dune mill, from which the village derived its name. It is also noted that he built the house that would eventually be bought by Homer Watson. With the influx of economic activity prior to 1853, the Ferry family donated the portion of land that they acquired to facilitate the construction of the Presbyterian Church within the village of Dune. The church also meets values 5 and 8. Dune Presbyterian Church has associated value through the potential to yield information that contributes to the understanding of the Presbyterian community in Kitchener. The church has been a place of worship for this community and in the region for over 170 years. The contextual value of the property relates to its physical, functional, and historical relationship to its surroundings. The church is located in its original location and has always been used as a church. The location of the church was significant due to its location and its position atop of a hill within the village of Dune. Additionally, staff note it was situated in close proximity to Adam Ferry's former mill, which was an important business in Dune during its early years of establishment. Thanks.
So the recommendation is that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the cultural heritage value or interest be recognized and designation pursued for the following properties: 69 Agnes Street, 10 Binghamton Street /138 to 140 Lancaster Street, 79 to 81 St. George, 1434 Trussler, 100 Erin Street West, 160 Cortland Avenue East, and 35 Rue Street. And that concludes our presentation on our municipal heritage update.
Thank you very much. 7 excellent properties. Great. Are there any questions or comments for staff? Yes, Councillor Michaud.
I'd just like to thank staff and the students for all the great work on this. This is a large body of work, and it was so interesting listening to all the stories about each of these properties. So well done. It's nice to see this happen.
Any other comments? I'd just like to draw attention, and I have written to staff about 35 Ruse Street, which is has those wonderful windows, and I think probably that's the biggest exceptional item on the building, the windows, and the what shall we say, the Muntins and the Mullions, and it seems to me that there might be a more descriptive term for them than we have in our present description. So I understand that there will be an updating of the statement of significance, and so maybe we can investigate that before it comes back, if it comes back. All right. I might say that it is a landmark for Dune. I know in your evaluation, you have not recognized it as a landmark, but certainly for the people and the residents out in that area, it's been a landmark. It's there, it's prominent. And before all the development came about and the trees and so on, it really has stood out. So I would differ on the evaluation of that. Are there any other comments? If not, I will read the motion. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the cultural heritage value or interest be recognized. Designation be pursued for the following properties: 69 Agnes Street, 10 Bingham Street, 138-140 Lancaster Street East, 79-81 St. George Street, 1434 Tressler Road, 100 Earn Street West, 160 Cortlandt Avenue East, and 35 Rose Street. Who would move this? Thank you, Natalie. Any further questions? All those in favor? Carried unanimously, and this will go to Council November the 18th, 2024. Thank you. So that wraps up most of the business, except we come to the information item, which is the permit application tracking sheet. Are there any questions for staff on this? Seeing none, I wonder if, Mariah, if you have anything to offer at this point in time?
I will just note, just following that last application, first of all, it's clerical error. That one would be processed under delegated approval authority. Also, with regards to the information item, you guys should have received a newly circulated heritage permit application sheet just with some updated information. And I will just note, since it's our last committee meeting of this term, our new committee members will officially be selected and will be ratified at council on November the 25th. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariah. Since this is our final meeting, although it doesn't mean that the work stops, I'd just like to thank staff for your persistence and concern and moving the agenda on and making sure that we get all these possible listed buildings into the form of designation. It's very important. I think it's also rewarding, for me in particular, having seen the willingness of the number of people to have their properties designated. This is really good news. You know, I guess with Bill 23, we got a bit of a push to get going, but maybe it was quite good. I think what has made a big difference is the fact that we have a criteria, and the public, residences, council have noted that we base our decisions on that criteria. And I do believe that maybe that has helped a bit, or maybe a whole lot. So thank you again, staff, and also thank you, committee members, for all your work, for coming to the meetings and sticking with it. All the reading that you've done and have done and will do in the future. And for those of you who may not come back by choice, I'm sorry to hear that you may not. However, I hope you will keep us in your thoughts. So without further ado, I thank you. Have a good Christmas. And I'm sorry, Councillor Chapman.
Madam Chair, I wonder if I could just share some reflections for the end of term. I would be remiss if I did not congratulate this committee on the impressive body of work that not only that did you contribute to by doing the field evaluations and really doing some hands-on work, but supporting staff and helping to celebrate heritage conservation within the city of Kitchener. You know, in our staff reports, we talk about understanding our past is really important as we make decisions for the future of our city. And I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for your contributions over the last term in helping us achieve that goal. I also want to acknowledge the incredible efforts by our team. We're going to grow. We're going to fill the whole thing by by next year, maybe. You know, the municipal heritage planners across Ontario meet regularly and they discuss different progress and work that's being done. And I'm really proud to be on a leading team in the province of Ontario that has taken the challenge the province has put forward on designating properties on our inventory quite seriously and being able to lead that work. It is not easy. It was an incredible effort. I have to read the reports. I don't have to go to archives and do all the research and make sure that the recommendations to you are well-founded and well-researched. And I just want to acknowledge the efforts by staff. I think it's incredible work. It's something to be really proud of. And I hope when you reflect on your term that you know that you are part of something really special and big. And thank you very much. And thank you to staff.
Thank you, Garrett. And thank you for your leadership and concern. So without further ado, I guess I could say early Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It's early November. However, do take care of yourself, watch your health, and watch the environment, watch the buildings, and watch the progress. So thank you again for everything.
And also thank you to our chair, Jean. It was lovely having you as a chair. This is my first term here, but it was absolutely wonderful working with you.
Good. Appreciate it. So I guess we do need someone to adjourn the meeting. Who would like to adjourn the meeting? Someone. Can't stay here all night. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. All right.